You will kneel." The words echoed through the grand hall like a death sentence, and every alpha present felt the weight of them settle into their bones. Caden stood perfectly still, his gray cloak hanging heavy on his shoulders, his eyes fixed on the polished marble floor beneath his worn boots. He had known this moment would come. He had felt it building in the air for weeks, ever since the summons arrived at his small territory on the edges of the kingdom. Prince Darius did not call councils to seek counsel. He called them to remind everyone exactly where they stood in the hierarchy of power, and Caden, the Grey Alpha, stood at the very bottom. I said, "Kneel." Prince Darius stepped down from the dais, his crimson cape flowing behind him like blood on water. He was everything Caden was not. Golden hair that caught the light of 1,000 candles. Eyes the color of amber that sparkled with confidence and cruelty in equal measure. A jaw so sharp it could have been carved from granite. The future king, the pride of the realm, the wolf every unmated female dreamed of, and every rival feared. Behind him, Lady Seraphina watched with a small smile playing at the corners of her perfect lips, her emerald dress clinging to curves that had driven lesser men to madness. She was the perfect match for the perfect prince, and everyone knew it. Their union would strengthen the kingdom, merge two powerful bloodlines, create an empire that would last 1,000 years. Caden did not move. Not because he was defiant, not because he was brave, but because something deep inside him, something he could not name or understand, whispered that if he knelt now, he would never stand again. The other alphas shifted uncomfortably in their ceremonial positions around the hall. There were perhaps 200 of them, leaders of packs both great and small, gathered from every corner of the kingdom. They wore their finest clothes, their most expensive furs, their most elaborate jewelry. They had come to show their strength, to network, to position themselves for favor with the crown. They had not come to witness an execution, but that was precisely what this felt like. The Grey Alpha does not hear well, it seems. Darius was close now, close enough that Caden could smell the expensive oils in his hair, the wine on his breath, the confidence that radiated from him like heat from a forge. Perhaps his bloodline is not just weak in body, but weak in mind as well. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not genuine laughter. The kind of laughter that came from fear and the desperate need to be on the right side of power. Caden had heard it before. He had heard it his entire life. The Grey Alpha, the disappointment, the mistake. The wolf whose fur had never turned the proper shade, whose eyes had never sparked with the fire of dominance, whose pack consisted of barely 300 souls clinging to survival in the poorest region of the kingdom. My prince. The voice came from the left, strong and clear, and entirely unexpected. Every head turned. Lyanna stepped forward from her position among the elite guards, her hand resting on the pommel of her sword, her dark hair braided tight against her skull in the warrior tradition. She was not beautiful in the way Lady Seraphina was beautiful. There was nothing soft about her. She was all edges and muscle and barely contained violence. She had earned her position through blood and skill, and everyone in the hall knew it. Perhaps we might continue with the formal proceedings. The council has much to discuss regarding the southern border conflicts. Prince Darius turned his amber gaze on her, and for a moment, something dangerous flickered there. But Lyanna did not flinch. She met his eyes with the steady calm of someone who had faced death more times than she could count, and found it less frightening than dishonor. The moment stretched. 1 second. 2. 3. Then Darius smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Of course. How thoughtful of you to remind me of my duties, Captain Lyanna. He turned back to Caden. But before we discuss borders and treaties and all those tedious matters of state, I think it is important that we address the elephant in the room. Or perhaps I should say, the Grey Wolf. More laughter. Louder this time. Emboldened by the prince's clear intent. Caden felt his jaw tighten, felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, felt the familiar burn of shame and rage mixing in his chest. Like poison. But he kept his face blank. He had learned long ago that showing emotion only gave them more ammunition. The gray alpha who could not control his temper. The gray alpha who was too sensitive. The gray alpha who did not belong. Tell me, Caden. Darius circled him slowly, like a predator assessing prey. What exactly does your pack contribute to this kingdom? Your lands produce barely enough grain to feed your own people. Your warriors are so poorly trained that bandits raid your borders with impunity. Your bloodline is so diluted that I am honestly surprised you can shift at all. He stopped directly in front of Caden, close enough that their chests almost touched. So I ask you again, what purpose do you serve? Why should I, when I am king, allow you to continue wasting resources that could be better distributed to packs that actually matter? The hall had gone completely silent. This was no longer theater. This was a genuine question, and everyone present knew that. The answer would determine not just Caden's fate, but the fate of every weak pack in the kingdom. If the Grey Alpha could be dissolved, stripped of his title, and his lands redistributed, then no one was safe. Power would be the only protection. Strength would be the only law. Caden lifted his eyes for the first time since entering the hall. He looked directly at Prince Darius, and he saw what he had always seen. A man who had been given everything and earned nothing. A man who confused birthright with worth. A man who would make a terrible king because he had never learned the difference between ruling and dominating. My pack survives, Caden said quietly. His voice was rough from disuse, low and gravelly like distant thunder. That is contribution enough. The words hung in the air like smoke. Prince Darius stared at him, and for just a heartbeat, Caden thought he saw something flicker in those amber eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or recognition that he had pushed too far. But then Lady Seraphina laughed, a crystalline sound that shattered the tension like glass. How quaint, she said, gliding forward to stand beside her betrothed. She placed one delicate hand on Darius's arm, a gesture of possession disguised as affection. The Grey Alpha believes that mere survival is an accomplishment. How very primitive. She looked at Caden with eyes the color of jade, cold and calculating. In my family we have a saying, that which does not grow, dies. Perhaps it is time for your pack to die, Alpha Caden, so that something stronger can take its place. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Caden felt something shift inside him. It was not anger, though anger was there. It was not fear, though fear was certainly present. It was something else. Something ancient. Something that had been sleeping for so long that he had forgotten it existed at all. It started as a warmth in his chest, then spread through his veins like molten silver. His vision sharpened. His hearing intensified. He could suddenly hear every heartbeat in the room, smell every emotion, taste the fear and excitement and anticipation on the air like wine. Is that what you truly believe? His voice had changed. Deeper now. Resonant. The kind of voice that did not ask for attention but commanded it. That strength is measured only in numbers and gold? That survival means nothing if it is not accompanied by glory? He took a step forward, and Prince Darius actually stepped back. It was instinctive, involuntary, and utterly humiliating. The future king retreating from the weakest alpha in the kingdom. The hall erupted in whispers. This was unprecedented, unthinkable. The Grey Alpha challenging a prince. Lady Seraphina's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening on Darius's arm. But Caden was not looking at them anymore. He was looking at something beyond them, something that existed in a space between memory and prophecy. He could see it now, could feel it. The truth that had been hidden from him, buried beneath generations of shame and lies, and carefully constructed ignorance. The ceremony of ascension will begin. The voice belonged to Elder Moira, the oldest member of the Council of Wolves, her silver hair hanging past her waist, her eyes milky with age but still sharp with intelligence. She stood from her seat at the high table, her ceremonial staff tapping against the marble floor with a sound like bones breaking. As is tradition when there is dispute about rank or title, the moon will judge, the moon will reveal, the moon will choose. Prince Darius whirled to face her. That is not necessary, Elder. I was merely making a point about the importance of strength in leadership. But his voice had lost its confident edge. There was something in it now that sounded dangerously close to pleading. The challenge has been made. Elder Moira's words were final, absolute. The ceremony must proceed. Unless the prince wishes to break with 1,000 years of tradition? The question was rhetorical, but it was also a trap. To refuse the ceremony would be to show fear, to admit that he was not confident in his own superiority, to reveal weakness before every alpha in the kingdom. Darius's jaw clenched. He looked at Lady Seraphina, who gave him a subtle nod. Of course he would proceed. Of course he would humiliate the Grey Alpha in the most public, most sacred way possible. It would be a story told for generations. The day Prince Darius proved his divine right before the moon herself. "Let the ceremony begin," he said. And his smile returned, sharp as a blade. The hall transformed. Servants appeared from hidden doors, carrying baskets of silver petals that they scattered across the floor in intricate patterns. The candles were extinguished one by one, until only moonlight remained, streaming through the massive skylights overhead. It was a full moon. Tonight, perfect for the ceremony, perfect for revelation. The alphas formed a circle, their bodies blocking any escape, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness as their wolves rose close to the surface. This was the most sacred ritual of their kind, the ceremony of ascension, a test of bloodline, of worthiness, of divine favor. Elder Moira stood at the center of the circle, her staff raised high. The moon goddess sees all. She knows the truth that lies buried in blood and bone. She recognizes her children, those who carry her mark, those who are worthy of her blessing. She turned her milky gaze on Caden. "Step forward, Grey Alpha. Show us your wolf. Show us your truth." Caden walked into the circle. His legs felt strange, disconnected from his body, as if he were watching himself from a great distance. The silver petals crushed beneath his boots released a scent like rain and wild honey. He could feel every eye on him, could feel the weight of their expectations. They wanted him to fail, needed him to fail. Because if he succeeded, if he was somehow blessed by the moon, then everything they believed about hierarchy and bloodlines and natural order would be called into question. "And you, Prince Darius, step forward. Show us the golden wolf. Show us the future king." Elder Moira's voice was neutral, but there was something in it, some subtle inflection that made Caden think she knew more than she was saying. Darius strode into the circle with absolute confidence. He removed his crimson cape with a flourish, letting it fall to the ground like shed skin. Underneath, he wore only black leather pants and boots, his torso bare and sculpted like a statue. He was magnificent. There was no other word for it. Every muscle defined, every movement graceful, every breath calculated for maximum impact. He shifted without effort, his body flowing from man to wolf in a single fluid motion. And what a wolf he was. Golden fur that shimmered in the moonlight. Eyes like liquid amber, size that dwarfed every other wolf in the room. He threw back his head and howled, and the sound was glorious, full of power and dominance and absolute certainty. The alphas around the circle howled in response, acknowledging his strength, his beauty, his right to rule. Even those who might have harbored doubts found themselves swept up in the moment. This was what a king should look like. This was what power incarnate looked like. Elder Moira turned to Caden. Now you, Grey Alpha, show us your wolf. Show us what the moon has blessed you with. Caden closed his eyes. He had always hated this moment. The shift was never easy for him. Never smooth. His wolf was reluctant, damaged somehow, broken in ways he had never understood. But now, with that strange warmth still flowing through his veins, with something ancient and powerful stirring in his blood, he felt different. He reached for his wolf, and instead of resistance, he felt recognition, like greeting an old friend he had forgotten existed. The shift began, but it was not like any shift he had experienced before. There was no pain, no struggle. His body simply understood what it needed to do, and it did it. His bones rearranged themselves with quiet efficiency. His muscles expanded and contracted in perfect harmony. His senses exploded outward, suddenly able to perceive things he had never imagined. He could hear the heartbeat of the mouse hiding in the walls 3 rooms away. Could smell the fear sweat on Lady Seraphina's skin despite her composed expression. Could taste the magic in the air, old and wild and hungry. When he opened his eyes, the world had changed. Or rather, he had changed. And now he could see the world as it truly was. He looked down at his paws, expecting to see the dull gray fur that had marked him as inferior his entire life. But the fur was not gray. It was silver. Pure, luminous silver that seemed to glow from within, as if moonlight itself had been woven into his coat. He was larger than he had been moments ago. Not as large as Prince Darius, but substantial, powerful, right. The hall had gone completely silent. No one was howling now. No one was celebrating. They were all staring at Caden with expressions that ranged from shock to horror to something that might have been awe. Elder Moira's staff slipped from her fingers, clattering against the marble floor. She dropped to her knees, her head bowed, her entire body trembling. Primordial, she whispered, and the word echoed through the hall like a prayer. The first blood, the true blood, the blood of the ancients. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Caden did not understand. He looked at Prince Darius, whose golden wolf had gone completely still, ears pinned back, tail low. The future king was radiating confusion, and unless Caden was very much mistaken, fear. Real fear. Primal fear. The kind of fear that had nothing to do with social status or political power and everything to do with instinct recognizing something infinitely more dangerous than itself. This is impossible. Lady Seraphina's voice cut through the silence. She had not shifted, still stood in her emerald gown, but her composure had cracked. The primordial bloodline died out 500 years ago. Everyone knows this. It is historical fact. But even as she said it, her eyes were fixed on Caden, and there was calculation there. Always calculation with her. Already trying to determine how this changed things, how she could use it. Elder Moira slowly pushed herself back to her feet, retrieving her staff with shaking hands. The bloodline did not die. It hid. It waited. The moon goddess preserved it, kept it safe through generations of wolves who thought themselves weak, who thought themselves cursed. She turned to face the assembled alphas. Do you not see? Do you not recognize the signs? His fur is not gray. It never was. It was silver, dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken, waiting for him to be ready. This changes nothing. Prince Darius shifted back to human form, his voice hard. But there was an edge of desperation in it now. Bloodline alone does not make a king. The council recognizes me as the heir. My father is king. I have been trained since birth for this role. He jabbed a finger toward Caden. He has nothing. No army, no allies, no political capital. What does it matter if he has ancient blood if he cannot use It? Caden shifted back, the transformation as easy as breathing. He stood naked in the circle, silver petals clinging to his skin, and for the first time in his life, he did not feel shame. He felt clarity. "You ask me what my pack contributes," he said quietly. "You asked me why you should allow us to exist." He looked around the circle, meeting the eyes of every alpha present. Some looked away. Some held his gaze with newfound respect. "My pack survives because we understand something that you have forgotten. Power is not given. It is not inherited. It is earned through sacrifice and struggle and the willingness to endure when everything else falls away." He turned back to Prince Darius. "You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and mistook it for a crown on your head. You have never known hunger, never known true loss, never had to make the impossible choice between feeding your people and maintaining your dignity. You lead because it was expected of you, not because you earned it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I lead because my people had no one else. And I learned through trial and failure and more mistakes than I can count, how to be what they needed." Prince Darius's face had gone red with rage. "How dare you presume to lecture me about leadership? You who cannot even keep bandits off your borders. You who runs the weakest pack in the kingdom." But his hands were shaking. Everyone could see it. "The moon has spoken." Elder Moira's voice rang. "With authority. The primordial blood has awakened, and according to the oldest laws that predate the current royal family by 3,000 years, the one who carries the first blood has the right to challenge for the throne." The hall erupted, alphas shouting, arguing, some calling for respect of tradition, others insisting this was madness. Lady Seraphina's face had gone pale, her perfect mask finally cracking to reveal genuine panic underneath, because she understood what the others were only beginning to grasp. Everything she had planned, every alliance she had carefully constructed, every manipulation she had orchestrated to ensure her place as queen, all of it was suddenly in jeopardy. There will be no challenge. The new voice was deep and resonant and carried absolute authority. King Aldrich stepped into the hall from the royal entrance, his silver hair tied back in the traditional warrior's knot, his eyes sharp despite his age. He was still a formidable wolf, still commanded respect. "We will not throw our kingdom into chaos over ancient superstitions and dormant bloodlines." But Elder Moira did not bow, did not defer. She met the king's gaze with her milky eyes and said, "The law is the law, Your Majesty. Even you cannot change what was written in the time of our ancestors." She turned to face the assembled alphas. The ceremony of challenge must be held. 3 trials: mind, body, spirit. The one who succeeds in all 3 will be recognized by the moon as the true Alpha King. King Aldrich looked like he wanted to argue, but he was trapped by the same tradition that gave him his crown. To refuse would be to admit that his own reign was not legitimate. To deny the law would be to undermine the very foundation of their society. He closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "So be it. The trials will commence in 3 days' time. That will give everyone time to prepare." He looked at Caden, and there was something in his expression that was difficult to read. Not quite hostility, not quite respect. "I suggest you use that time wisely, Grey Alpha. My son will not go easy on you just because you surprised us tonight." Caden bowed his head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "I would not expect him to, Your Majesty." The hall began to empty, alphas filing out in clusters, their voices low but intense as they discussed what they had just witnessed. Caden stood alone in the circle of silver petals, feeling the weight of what had just happened, settling onto his shoulders like a physical thing. He had not asked for this, had not wanted this, but the moon had chosen, and he could no more refuse than he could stop breathing. That was either the bravest thing I have ever seen or the most foolish. Liana appeared at his side, holding out his cloak. Her face was carefully neutral, but her eyes betrayed curiosity. "I am not yet certain which." Caden took the cloak, wrapping it around himself. "I am not certain either," he admitted. "But it seems I no longer have a choice." "There is always a choice." She glanced toward the exit where Prince Darius had disappeared, Lady Seraphina clinging to his arm like a lifeline. "You could leave. Refuse the challenge. Go back to your pack and live your life." "Could I?" Caden looked at her. "After tonight? After everyone saw what I am? They will never let me simply fade back into obscurity. Either I prove I am worthy of this bloodline, or someone will decide I am too dangerous to live." Liana was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You are right, which is why you are going to need help." She crossed her arms. "The trials are not simple tests of strength. They are designed to break you. Mind, body, spirit. Prince Darius has been preparing for them his entire life. You have 3 days. Are you offering to help me?" Caden was genuinely surprised. Liana was captain of the royal guard. Her loyalty should be to the crown, to Prince Darius. "I am offering to help the kingdom," she corrected. "Because I have served under King Aldrich for 15 years, and I have watched Prince Darius for just as long. And what I have seen does not inspire confidence." She met his eyes. "A good soldier knows the difference between following orders and following the right path. Sometimes they are the same. Sometimes they are not." Before Caden could respond, Elder Moira approached them, her staff tapping softly against the marble. "Captain Liana speaks wisdom, young primordial. But she speaks only part of the truth." The old woman studied Caden with those unsettling milky eyes. "There is something you must know. Something that has been kept secret for 500 years. She glanced around, ensuring they were alone. The primordial bloodline did not simply fade away. It was hunted, systematically eliminated by those who feared its power. Your ancestors survived only by hiding, by making themselves appear weak, by allowing the world to believe they were failures." Caden felt cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the same forces that hunted your bloodline before will hunt you now. And they are not who you think they are." She looked toward the exit where the royal family had disappeared. "Power has many faces, child, and the throne is only one of them. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and revelation. Liana took charge of his physical training, drilling, him relentlessly in combat techniques he had never learned, pushing his body to limits he had not known existed. The primordial blood made him faster, stronger, more resilient than he had ever been. But raw power meant nothing without discipline. She taught him how to channel his strength, how to read an opponent, how to turn defense into offense in the space of a heartbeat. They trained in secret, in the old practice yards on the outskirts of the palace grounds, where no one would think to look. For them, Elder Moira worked on his mind. She taught him the history of the primordial wolves, the ancient laws that governed their kind, the subtle politics that determined who held real power versus who simply wore the crown. She explained that the first trial would test his knowledge of wolf lore, his understanding of their traditions, his ability to think strategically under pressure. But more than facts, she taught him perspective. How to see the patterns beneath the chaos. How to recognize manipulation before it trapped him. How to trust his instincts even when logic told him otherwise. But it was the third preparation that proved most difficult. Spirit was not something that could be trained like a muscle or memorized like a fact. It was the core of who he was, the essence of his being. And Caden discovered that his spirit was more damaged than he had realized. Years of humiliation had carved deep wounds. Decades of being told he was inferior had planted seeds of doubt that had grown into forests of insecurity. He could feel the primordial power flowing through him, but there was a wall inside himself that prevented him from fully accessing it. A wall built from shame and fear, and the bone-deep certainty that he was not enough. You must break it down. Elder Moira's voice was gentle but firm. They sat in meditation in the sacred grove, moonlight filtering through ancient trees. The wall serves no purpose now except to cage your true self. Let it fall. I do not know. How? Caden admitted. The honesty felt like removing armor, leaving himself vulnerable in ways that terrified him. Yes, you do. She placed one wrinkled hand over his heart. You have been breaking through walls your entire life. Every time you stood back up after being knocked down. Every time you chose to lead when it would have been easier to quit. Every time you protected your pack even when the rest of the kingdom mocked you for it. You have always known how to break walls. You simply convinced yourself that you did not deserve to be free. The words hit him like physical blows, because they were true. He had spent so long accepting the world's judgment of him that he had forgotten to question whether that judgment was accurate. He had become complicit in his own diminishment. What if I am not worthy? The question came out as barely a whisper. What if the moon made a mistake? Elder Moira laughed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. The moon does not make mistakes, child. She simply plays a longer game than we can see. You ask if you are worthy. I ask you, worthy of what? A throne? A crown? These are human concerns. The moon cares nothing for politics. She cares about balance, about truth, about the wild heart of nature asserting itself when civilization has grown too corrupt. She squeezed his hand. You are not here to be worthy. You are here to be yourself. Finally. Completely. Without apology. On the morning of the trials, Caden woke to find a package outside his temporary quarters. Inside was a set of ceremonial clothing in deep midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread and patterns that depicted the phases of the moon. There was no note, but he recognized the handiwork. Lady Seraphina. It was a message, an acknowledgement that she saw him as a legitimate threat now, and an invitation to play the game on her level. He dressed carefully, studying himself in the mirror. The man looking back was familiar, but different. Same sharp cheekbones. Same dark hair that never quite laid flat. Same storm gray eyes. But there was something else now. A certainty. A presence. The gray alpha had been a role he played, a mask he wore to survive. This person in the mirror was something new. Something that had not yet been named. The grand arena was packed with spectators when he arrived. It seemed every wolf in the kingdom had come to witness the trials. The royal box sat elevated above the arena floor, King Aldrich in the center flanked by advisors and nobles. Lady Seraphina sat beside Prince Darius, her hand possessively on his knee, her emerald eyes tracking Caden's every movement. Lyanna stood with the royal guard, her face expressionless, but her posture tense, ready to act if things went wrong. Elder Moira stood at the center of the arena, her silver hair unbound and flowing past her waist. She raised her staff for silence, and the crowd obeyed immediately. We gather under the full moon's light to witness the trials of ascension. 3 challenges, 3 tests, 3 truths revealed. She turned to face Caden and Prince Darius, who stood on opposite sides of the arena. The first trial tests the mind. A leader must know not just how to fight, but when to fight. Must understand not just laws, but the spirit behind them. Must see not just what is, but what could be. 2 pedestals rose from the arena floor, ancient mechanisms groaning to life. On each pedestal sat a complex puzzle box, carved from moonstone and covered in glyphs. You have until the sand runs through to solve the puzzle and retrieve what lies inside. Whoever succeeds first wins the trial. Whoever fails loses more than just points. Caden approached his pedestal cautiously. The puzzle box was beautiful and deadly looking in equal measure. The glyphs were an old tongue, the language of the first wolves. Barely anyone spoke it anymore. But Elder Moira had made sure he learned. He could read the inscription. The truth you seek lies in what you surrender. Cryptic. Frustratingly so. He glanced at Prince Darius, who was already manipulating his puzzle box with confident movements. Of course he would know how to solve it. Of course he would have been trained for exactly this scenario. Caden focused on his own box. There were sliding panels and rotating sections, each movement revealing new glyphs, new patterns. He tried the logical approach first, looking for sequences, for mathematical progressions, for anything that resembled conventional problem-solving. Nothing worked. The box remained sealed, mocking him with its impenetrable surface. The sand was draining faster than he expected. Half gone already. Panic tried to claw its way into his chest, but he forced it down. Think. Not like a scholar. Like a wolf. Like someone who had learned to survive by seeing what others missed. He read the inscription again. The truth you seek lies in what you surrender. What did that mean? Then it hit him. This was not about solving the puzzle. It was about understanding the lesson. He had spent his entire life trying to prove he was enough, trying to earn respect, trying to solve the problem of his own inadequacy. But what if there was no problem to solve? What if the only thing holding him back was his refusal to let go of the story he had been told about himself? Caden placed both hands on the puzzle box and stopped trying to manipulate it. Instead, he closed his eyes and simply felt the cool surface of the moonstone, felt the power humming through the ancient glyphs, felt his own primordial blood resonating with something old and wild in the box itself. And then, without conscious thought, he surrendered the need to prove anything, surrendered the fear of failure, surrendered the whole concept that he needed to earn what was already his by birthright. The puzzle box chimed softly and opened. Inside lay a silver medallion, ancient and beautiful, engraved with the phases of the moon. He lifted it carefully, feeling its weight, its significance. When he looked up, Prince Darius was still struggling with his own box, frustration evident in every tense line of his body. The sand had almost run out. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The horn blew. Elder Moira's voice rang out. The first trial is complete. Alpha Caden has succeeded. Prince Darius has failed. A stunned silence filled the arena, then erupted into chaos. Some cheering, some shouting in outrage, some simply shocked. Into immobility. Prince Darius slammed his fist against his pedestal, the puzzle box still sealed. This is meaningless. A trick. The real test is strength, and everyone here knows who the stronger wolf is. But there was desperation in his voice now. The Golden Prince was no longer invincible. The second trial will test the body. Elder Moira gestured, and the arena floor split open, revealing a pit. No, not a pit. An obstacle course. But unlike any Caden had seen before. The course turned through underground tunnels, rose into aerial platforms suspended by chains, included sections submerged in water. You will race through the course in your wolf forms, first to reach the end and ring the bell wins. But be warned, the course adapts. What works for one may not work for another. Trust your instincts, trust your blood. They shifted simultaneously. Prince Darius's golden wolf and Caden's silver wolf, facing each other across the starting line. The horn blew. They launched forward. Darius was faster initially, his longer legs eating up ground, his powerful muscles propelling him ahead. But Caden had spent his life surviving, and survival had taught him things that privilege never could. When Darius tried to force his way through narrow tunnels, Caden found alternate routes. When Darius powered through obstacles with brute strength, Caden used momentum and timing. When Darius tired, burning energy in explosive bursts, Caden maintained steady endurance. The aerial section nearly killed them both. Chains swaying over a 50-foot drop. One wrong step meant a fall that would not be fatal, but would definitely end the trial. Darius crossed with pure courage, leaping from platform to platform with terrifying boldness. Caden crossed with calculation, testing each chain before trusting his weight to it, moving slower, but safer. They were neck and neck entering the underwater section. This was where everything changed. The water was black and freezing, disorienting. Caden dove under, his silver fur rippling in the current. He could not see more than a few feet ahead, but he could feel, could sense the vibrations in the water, could taste the direction the current was flowing. His primordial blood sang in his veins, connecting him to elements in ways he had never experienced. The water was not an obstacle. It was an ally. He swam with it rather than against it, let it guide him through the maze of submerged tunnels. He emerged first, shaking. Water from his fur, racing toward the bell. He could hear Darius behind him, closing fast. The golden wolf was larger, stronger, faster in a straight sprint. But the bell was only 20 feet away. 15, 10. Caden leaped, jaws closing around the bell rope, pulling with all his strength. The bell rang out clear and true, just as Darius reached him. The second trial was his. The crowd's reaction was even more intense this time. This was not a puzzle that could be dismissed as luck or trickery. This was physical proof that the Grey Alpha, the one they had all mocked, was the equal of the Golden Prince they had worshipped. And equal was being generous. Caden had won clearly, definitively. Prince Darius shifted back to human form, chest heaving, water dripping from his hair. He looked at Caden with something approaching hatred. "The third trial," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That is where this ends. Spirit cannot be faked, cannot be learned in 3 days. I was born for this. You were born to serve." Elder Moira raised her staff. "The final trial tests the spirit. A leader must have more than cleverness and strength. They must have the will to endure, the courage to face their deepest fears, the wisdom to recognize truth even when it destroys them." She gestured to the center of the arena, where a circle of silver fire had begun to burn. Not natural fire, moonfire, ancient magic. "You will both enter the circle. What you face inside will be yours alone. No one can help you. No one can save you. You must save yourself, or be consumed." Caden stared at the silver flames. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, dancing without heat, burning without fuel. He could feel power radiating from them like pressure against his skin. This was the real test, the one that Elder Moira had warned him about, the one that would require him to confront everything he had been running from his entire life. Prince Darius entered first, walking into the flames. Without hesitation, they enveloped him instantly, silver light pulsing, his silhouette visible but distorted. Caden could hear nothing from inside the circle, could sense nothing. Whatever was happening, it was between Darius and the moon. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, the world disappeared. He was no longer in the arena, no longer standing on solid ground. He was floating in endless silver light, weightless, directionless. And then, the visions began. He saw himself as a child, small and gray and confused, surrounded by pack members who whispered that he was cursed. He felt the shame burning through him all over again, the certainty that something was fundamentally wrong with who he was. He saw himself as a teenager, watching other wolves shift for the first time with pride and joy, while his own shift came late and painful and incomplete. He felt the isolation, the loneliness, the desperate hunger for acceptance that would never come. He saw himself as a young alpha, barely 20 years old, inheriting a pack that was already dying. saw himself making impossible choices, sending warriors to fight bandits knowing they might not return, rationing food during harsh winters knowing some would go hungry, watching children grow thin and weak because there was not enough of anything to go around. He felt the weight of every failure, every death, every moment when his best was not good enough. The guilt threatened to drown him. He could barely breathe under the crushing pressure of it. "Is this what you want me to see?" He spoke to the silver light, to the moon, to whatever force was testing him. "My failures, my weaknesses, I already know them. I live with them every single day." The light pulsed, and the scene changed. Now he stood in a throne room, not the current palace, but something older, grander, carved from living stone and decorated with murals depicting wolves running beneath full moons. He wore a crown of silver, and hundreds of wolves bowed before him. He could feel their loyalty, their love, their absolute faith in his leadership. It was everything he had ever wanted, everything he had convinced himself he did not deserve. But something was wrong. He looked closer at the bowing wolves and realized they had no faces. Were not individuals. Were simply masses of fur and submission. And the crown on his head felt heavy. Too heavy. It was crushing him slowly, vertebra by vertebra, grinding him down into something small and gray and broken. "This is not real," he said. "This is fear wearing the mask of desire." The vision shattered. The silver light grew brighter, almost blinding, and then he saw her, Lyanna, standing before him in full armor, sword drawn, eyes blazing with determination. "Fight me," she commanded. "Prove you are stronger. Prove you deserve to lead." Caden shifted to his wolf form instinctively, prepared to meet her challenge. But as he circled her, looking for an opening, he realized something. This was not about physical combat. This was about what she represented. The warrior. The one who had achieved through skill and dedication everything she had. She did not have ancient bloodlines or divine mandates. She had simply been better than everyone else. And she was asking him to prove he had earned his power through something other than accident of birth. "I cannot fight you," Caden said, shifting back to human. "Because you are right. I have not earned this. Through years of training and battle. I did not study strategy and tactics from childhood. I did not dedicate my life to perfecting the art of war." He met her eyes. But leadership is not just about being the best warrior. It is about seeing what needs to be done, and doing it even when no one is watching. It is about choosing to care for others when caring hurts. It is about standing up one more time after being knocked down 1,000 times. He paused. "You earned your position through skill. I earned mine through survival. Both are valid. Both are necessary." Lyanna smiled, and it was not her smile, but something wearing her face. "You learn quickly, primordial." Her form began to dissolve. But there is one more test, the hardest one. The silver light coalesced into a mirror, a perfect reflection of Caden himself. Same face, same body, same silver fur barely visible beneath human skin. But the eyes were different. These eyes held no doubt, no insecurity, no fear. At him with absolute contempt. "I am who you could have been," the reflection said. "If you had not wasted decades hiding. If you had not spent your life accepting weakness as identity. If you had claimed your birthright when it first awakened instead of burying it beneath shame." Caden stared at his alternate self. The accusation struck deep because it was fundamentally true. How many years had he lost? How many opportunities had he squandered? How many people could he have helped if he had been brave enough to be himself? "You are right," he said quietly. "I wasted time. I hid. I accepted limitations that were not real." He stepped closer to the mirror. "But I also learned things you never could. I learned empathy through suffering. I learned resilience through failure. I learned to value others because I knew what it felt like to be discarded. He placed his hand on the mirror's surface. You are stronger than me, more confident, more powerful, but you lack something essential. You lack the understanding that true strength includes vulnerability, that real leadership includes admitting mistakes, that lasting power is built on service, not domination. The reflection's contempt wavered. Pretty words from someone who has achieved nothing. I have achieved survival, Caden said. Not just for myself, but for hundreds of wolves who would have died without someone willing to fight for them when fighting seemed pointless. I have achieved the ability to stand here now, facing you, knowing that I am imperfect and insufficient and still choosing to move forward anyway. He smiled. That is worth more than 1,000 easy victories. The mirror shattered. The silver light exploded outward, then collapsed inward, and suddenly Caden was back in the arena, standing in the circle of moonfire. The flames were dying down, flickering out one by one. He looked across the circle and saw Prince Darius on his knees, head bowed, shoulders shaking. The Golden Prince was weeping. Not gentle tears. Harsh, racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside him. Elder Moira stepped forward, her expression sorrowful. Prince Darius has faced his truth and found it lacking. The moon has judged. Alpha Caden has passed all 3 trials. By ancient law, by sacred right, by the will of the moon herself, he is recognized as the true Alpha King. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The arena exploded with sound. Some wolves howling in triumph, others roaring in outrage. King Aldrich sat frozen in his box, face ashen, clearly struggling to process what had just happened. Lady Seraphina had gone pale, her carefully constructed future crumbling before her eyes. But Lyanna was smiling, a small, satisfied smile, as if she had known all along how this would end. Caden walked over to Prince Darius, who was still on his knees. He extended his hand. Darius looked up, his amber eyes red and swollen, and for the first time Caden saw the person beneath the prince, someone who had been crushed under expectations just as surely as Caden had been crushed under contempt, someone who had never been allowed to be anything other than perfect, someone who had cracked under the weight of a destiny he never chose. Get up, Caden said quietly. This does not have to destroy you. Darius stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. Caden pulled him to his feet, and the symbolism was not lost on anyone watching. The new king showing mercy to the fallen prince. The gray alpha, no longer gray, offering dignity to someone who had tried to take everything from him. King Aldrich descended from the royal box, moving with the careful control of someone in shock. He approached Caden, and every eye in the arena watched to see what would happen next. Would the old king refuse to step down? Would this end in civil war? The tension was thick enough to taste, but Aldrich simply removed his crown, the simple circlet of silver that had rested on his brow for 30 years, and placed it in Caden's hands. The moon has spoken, he said, voice rough with emotion, and I will not stand against her will. You are king now. May you rule with more wisdom than I did. Caden accepted the crown, but did not put it on. I do not want to erase what came before. Your reign brought stability and peace to a fractured kingdom that is worth honoring. He looked out at the assembled crowd. What I want is to build something new, something that recognizes strength in all its forms, not just the ones we have traditionally valued, something that makes room for the wolves who do not fit conventional molds. Elder Moira stepped forward, taking the crown from his hands. Then let us begin the proper ceremony. Let us crown not just a king, but a new era. She turned to face the crowd. Tonight, under the full moons. Light. We witness the return of the primordial bloodline. We witness the end of one age and the beginning of another. We witness the moon's chosen taking his rightful place. She placed the crown on Caden's head, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for him specifically. Which, in a sense, it had, across thousands of years and countless generations. The moon broke through the clouds overhead, bathing the arena in silver light, and Caden felt it, felt the connection to every wolf in the kingdom, felt the weight of their hopes and fears and dreams settling onto his shoulders, felt the enormity of what he had just accepted. He was no longer the gray alpha, no longer the outcast, no longer the one everyone pitied or mocked. He was the Alpha King, the primordial, the moon's chosen. But he was also still himself, still the wolf who had learned through hardship and failure, still the leader who understood what it meant to struggle, still the person who knew that true strength included admitting weakness. And that was exactly the kind of king the kingdom needed. Not someone who had never fallen, but someone who knew how to stand back up. Lyanna approached, dropping to one knee. "My king," she said formally, "the royal guard awaits your command." But when she looked up, there was warmth in her eyes, respect, recognition, something that might in time become more. "Rise, Captain," Caden said. "I will need warriors I can trust. Advisors who will speak truth even when uncomfortable. People who value the kingdom over their own advancement." He smiled. "I think you fit that description." Lady Seraphina was the last to approach. Her emerald dress seemed duller somehow, as if her diminished prospects had leached color from the fabric itself. But her composure had returned. She curtsied deeply, perfectly, her face a mask of serene acceptance. "My king, I offer my congratulations and my service. The House of Seraphina has always supported the throne, regardless of who sits upon it." The words were correct, the tone was measured, but her eyes told a different story. She was already calculating, already planning, already determining how to turn this situation to her advantage. "I appreciate your loyalty," Caden said carefully, because he knew what she was, knew that keeping her close was dangerous, but sending her away might be worse. "I am certain we will have much to discuss in the days ahead about how best to serve the kingdom." The coronation ceremony continued deep into the night. Formal oaths of loyalty from the other alphas, rituals of blessing from the elder wolves, celebrations that would have felt wrong just hours ago, but now seemed inevitable, as if this had always been the destined outcome. Caden performed his role with as much grace as he could manage, but part of his mind was already working through the implications. He had a kingdom now, a kingdom with problems that went far deeper than questions of bloodline and succession. Poverty in the outer territories, political corruption among the noble houses, growing tensions with neighboring wolf nations, and somewhere, according to Elder Moira's warning, forces that had once hunted the primordial bloodline and might try again. As dawn approached, Caden finally escaped to the palace gardens, needing a moment of quiet before the demands of kingship consumed him entirely. He found a bench beneath an ancient oak tree and sat down heavily, suddenly feeling every moment of the past 3 days. Exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. He had won, had achieved something he had not even known he wanted. But victory felt less like triumph and more like responsibility, a weight he would carry for the rest of his life. You cannot hide from yourself anymore. Elder Moira appeared from the shadows, moving with surprising silence for someone so old. She sat beside him without asking permission. For 30 years you were the gray alpha, the one everyone dismissed, the one who did not matter. That identity was a prison, but it was also a shield. It protected you from expectations, from scrutiny, from the burden of being seen. She looked at him with those unsettling eyes. That shield is gone now. Everyone sees you. Everyone expects something from you. Everyone has opinions about what you should do, who you should be. Can you bear it? Caden was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, he admitted. But I know I have to try. Because if I do not, if I run now, then everything my pack endured was for nothing. Every moment of struggle, every sacrifice, every time we chose to keep going when giving up would have been easier. It all becomes meaningless if I cannot find the courage to accept what I have become. Elder Moira smiled, reaching out to pat his hand with her wrinkled one. Good answer, young king. Very good answer indeed. She stood, her staff tapping against the ground. Sleep now, while you can. Tomorrow, the real work begins. And trust me, when I say, the trials you faced in that arena will seem easy compared to what comes next. She walked away, leaving Caden alone with his thoughts and his crown and the slowly rising sun. He closed his eyes, feeling the morning breeze on his face, hearing the birds beginning their dawn songs. Somewhere in his territory, his pack was waking up, probably still unaware that their gray alpha had become a king. He would need to return soon, to explain, to reassure them that he had not forgotten where he came from. That despite everything that had changed, some things remained constant. His commitment to them, his understanding of struggle, his belief that every wolf, regardless of bloodline or status, deserved dignity and protection. The sun broke over the horizon, golden light spilling across the gardens. A new day, a new reign, a new chance to prove that power could be used for something other than domination. Caden opened his eyes and stood, the crown heavy on his head but his spine straight, his shoulders back. The gray alpha was dead. Long live the Silver King. And the kingdom, whether it realized it yet or not, was about to change in ways that would echo through generations. Because sometimes the moon chose not the strongest wolf, or the most skilled, or the most prepared. Sometimes she chose the one who had learned, through suffering and survival, what it really meant to lead. And that wolf, silver-furred and storm-eyed and carrying the weight of an ancient bloodline, was ready to remake the world.